everyone, and welcome. You are watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. It's Tuesday, January 5, 2021, and tonight we have updates from several of our correspondents across North America. We'll head first to Edmonton, Alberta, with Thomas Likeness.
The outrage grows in Alberta over elected officials jetting off to exotic locales for the holidays.
Then Ace Ramirez in Gaithersburg reports about Maryland falling behind the nationwide COVID-19 vaccination rate. Then Nicole Adeline Padilla in Baton Rouge reports about Louisiana pharmacies receiving COVID-19 vaccine for the elderly and additional health workers. Then we'll head to Glendale, California with Annabelle de Mesa.
Vignes Housing Project to provide affordable and interim housing for the homeless in Los Angeles.
Then Aaron Reo-Tutar in Panorama City, California.
LA Public Health Department says high number of COVID-19 patients in hospitals is distressing.
Angel Membrere in Sacramento will report about California Governor Gavin Newsom explaining the 5 components of the statewide oxygen strategy. Then Carla Valdez in Union Township, New Jersey reports about Governor Phil Murphy commemorating the class of New Jersey Transit locomotive engineers. For business news, Bobby Soriano reports about how all eyes on the Georgia Senate elections. Saudi Arabia announcing a surprise oil production cut, and Drugmakers quietly raising U.S. prices for more than 500 drugs. Plus, EBC Sports, E.J. Gonzalez in Alexandria, Virginia.
The National Basketball Association heightens precautions to combat COVID-19 around the league.
And for tonight's virtual roundtable, January 5 is National Screenwriters Day. So later, let's talk about our favorite movies and the geniuses behind them. Our coverage begins now. First, let's take an overview of today's COVID-19 numbers. According to the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University and Medicine, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Time today, the number of cases of COVID-19 reported worldwide is now more than 86,201,000. The top 3 on the list of countries with the most recorded cases still has not changed, with the U.S., with more than 20,981,000, India 10,356,000, and Brazil more than 7,753,000. Sadly, this virus has now already claimed more than 1,863,000 lives worldwide. The top 3 countries with the most number of COVID-19 related deaths are again the United States with more than 356,000, Brazil with more than 196,000, and India with more than 149,000. Voters headed to the polls here today in the southern state of Georgia for a runoff election that will determine whether Democrats or Republicans control the U.S. Senate for the first 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency. 78-year-old President-elect Joe Biden and outgoing President Donald Trump both visited the Peach State on Monday to make last-ditch appeals for their candidates. 74-year-old Trump urged Georgians at a rally to vote for Republican incumbent Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, but spent more time rehashing his claims that he won the November 3 presidential election. The Senate runoff in Georgia is taking place during a week of high political tensions in the country, with Trump still trying to reverse his election loss and protests planned in Washington. On Wednesday, Vice President Mike Pence is to preside over a joint session of Congress to certify the Electoral College vote that confirmed Biden the winner of the White House race. Trump has called for protests in the nation's capital, and he urged Pence on Tuesday to, quote, reject fraudulently chosen electors, a move that the vice president has no legal authority to make. Now, in related news, at the nation's capital, hundreds of Donald Trump supporters began massing in Washington today, Tuesday, a day ahead of a protest called by the outgoing U.S. president who refuses to concede defeat in November's election. Coming from all corners of the country, the demonstrators said they had answered Trump's appeal to gather in the Capitol tomorrow, Wednesday, when the U.S. Congress is expected to vote and finalize President-elect Joe Biden's election victory. Trump last month tweeted that the supporters should head to Washington for what he promised would be a, quote, wild day of protests. Large parts of the downtown area were boarded up, with shops and businesses shuttered by the virus and amid fears of a repeat of the violence that rocked the city during racial justice protests earlier this year. Trump has refused to accept his election loss, making repeated and unfounded claims of fraud or vote rigging in the states where he was narrowly beaten. Various courts have rejected legal challenges from Trump's team. Now, in other news, a new Venezuelan parliament was sworn in Tuesday with President Nicolas Maduro's party in firm control and opposition leader Juan Guaido officially without a job, but with foreign backing to keep up a parallel legislator. The new assembly was denounced as a, quote, fraudulently elected body by outgoing U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who said in a statement Washington recognized Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela. A total of 256 of the National Assembly's 277 seats are in the hands of Maduro's United Socialist Party of Venezuela and its allies after the December 6 elections boycotted by the opposition, who claimed fraud. The chamber, which has a 5-year mandate, previously had an opposition majority with Guaido as its speaker since 2019. Meanwhile, Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido, now officially out of a job, has plans to maintain a parallel parliament of shadow opposition lawmakers. Let's take a look.
Estamos aquí de pie, a pesar de la persecución, a pesar de las amenazas, a pesar del miedo que pretende infundir una dictadura, a pesar del show que estarán haciendo en minutos en el Palacio Federal Legislativo, secuestrado por una dictadura de un proceso que nadie reconoce, que tendrá el mismo... Mire, van a hablar entre comillas de diálogo, van a hablar entre comillas de reconciliación, palabras vacías cuando hay más de 300 presos políticos en Venezuela, cuando están señalados por delitos de lesa humanidad, de que se sometan a la justicia universal, si creen entonces en la verdad. Así que el llamado hoy a la comunidad internacional que nos ha acompañado en este proceso es sencillo, es muy sencillo. Es respaldar los mecanismos de solución al conflicto a través de elecciones presidenciales y parlamentarias libres y justas.
Considered Venezuela's legitimate head of state by some 50 foreign governments, while Maduro is subject to Western sanctions and labeled a dictator over alleged voter fraud and other abuses. Crucially, Maduro has retained the support of Venezuela's powerful military in every branch of government able to exercise actual power. Only parliament was beyond his grasp until now. But even while the opposition controlled the National Assembly for 5 years, they had no actual power as the regime-dominated Supreme Court annulled their every decision. Now, up next, we'll have reports from Edmonton, Alberta, Gaithersburg, Maryland, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Eagle News America will continue. Stay with us.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back to Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo coming to you from Atlanta. Not many are happy with how several members of the Alberta legislature spent their holidays. Bureau Chief Thomas Likeness tells us why. Thomas?
Thank you, Philip. Well, it's been more than a week about a week, I should say, since the story broke about more than half a dozen members of the Alberta legislature and a few senior staffers defying the province's travel guidelines. Now, after posting messages on social media admonishing the unwashed to remain at home this holiday season, to forego those family dinners, to definitely avoid unnecessary travel outside of the country, These elected officials lined up at the airport departure gates, boarding passes in hand, and took their flights to warmer climes. The elected elite even posted pictures of their exotic vacations away from Canadian frigid winters on social media. I guess that's so the poor sots who had to stay at home could be part of the fun. Well, when they heard public objections upon their return home, these politicians, they acted like a bunch of kids caught smoking behind the barn saying, "I'm sorry, I promise I won't do it again." Premier Jason Kenney initially did nothing, essentially giving them get-out-of-jail-free cards. He said, although these officials didn't follow the guidelines, they didn't actually break any laws. And because he hadn't specifically said they could not travel, he didn't feel right about punishing them. However, going forward, Kenney made it clear that he gave them a good talking to and told them that such travel is now verboten. But the public didn't let up. Outrage grew and continued for days. People began to mock their elected representatives, erecting welcome home signs outside their constituency offices. Some of them even wrote satirical songs about the political travelers. Well, the premier finally got the message, sort of. He accepted the resignation of Cabinet Minister Tracy Allard, whose responsibilities also included overseeing the COVID vaccination program. Others were stripped of their extra duties, meaning a pay cut, and he demoted his chief of staff. But instead of calling a news conference to announce this and take questions from reporters, the premier hid behind his Facebook account where he simply posted a note about the punishments. Many are now saying the premier is a day late and a dollar short. The same scenario is played out in several other Canadian provinces, as well as the federal government, and you almost need a calculator to add up the growing list of political jet setters. And what people here are finding so upsetting is that they're being asked to make sacrifices. They're being told, hey, we're all in this together. But they're finding out, like the farm animals in George Orwell's novel Animal Farm, even though we're all equal, some seem to be more equal than others. Premier Kenney's government, in the opinion polls, the lowest in Canada in terms of its handling of the pandemic, is being criticized for not acting fast enough or strong enough to try to curb the spread of coronavirus. And this latest scandal does not bode well for his government's political future. So while we wait until it's safe to travel, I want to wish you all good health. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Thomas. Now, I can really imagine, because we've experienced some similar things down here, south of your border, that this might be really hitting home with people. Are people outraged? And if so, how outraged are they?
Oh, you're right. It is really hitting home with people. People have sacrificed a lot. Then they see these politicians not making the same sacrifices that they're asking of others. They're traveling. Well, they had to cancel their vacation plans. And for some, the guidelines have prevented them from even visiting dying relatives in the local hospital. So there's this profound sense of unfairness. And because all of us have a stake in this pandemic, all of us have been touched in one way or another. And this could come back to haunt the government in the next election. People have lost loved ones. They've lost jobs. Some of them have lost their businesses. The anger is widespread. It crosses the entire political spectrum. This is not a left issue, a right issue, or people in the middle. They're all disgusted. And even though it'll be 2 years before people go to the polls, the stench of this scandal is going to linger in the nostrils of many voters, and it could be costly to the government.
Absolutely. And, speaking of cost, you mentioned that one cabinet minister actually already lost her post. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, Municipal Affairs Minister Tracy Allard resigned a few days after returning from Hawaii. And as I mentioned earlier, she's also the minister responsible for overseeing the province's vaccination program. Because of the timing, I suspect she wasn't asked to resign. She just couldn't take it anymore. She was the subject of a lot of ridicule. She's from the small city of Grand Prairie in northwestern Alberta, where pretty much everyone knows everyone else. And upon her return, Allard defended her travel, saying she went to Hawaii because, it's been a family tradition for 17 years to spend the holidays there, and she didn't want to break that. But only days earlier, she was posting on social media that others should forget about traditions and stay home. You know, the ultimate hypocrisy. So people erected signs at her office saying, "Aloha, welcome home." Again, satirical songs written. All of this was a lot of pressure on her. You might say it's the equivalent of the punishment in the Middle Ages when offenders were put in stocks in the middle of the town while the public threw rotten fruit at them. You know, people who voted for her clearly felt betrayed.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that, she had a key role in the pandemic response. Well, what effect is all of this behavior going to have on the government's future efforts to control the pandemic?
That's a really good question, because the big danger here is the erosion of public trust. And when you lose that trust, this could translate into reduced compliance for government guidelines. We're all tired of the rules now, but when we see our leaders not following their own advice, many people say, well, why should we? In the paper this morning on the front page, at least one Edmonton business owner said she's defying the lockdown, considering defying the lockdown, and she'll reopen her hair salon. The present lockdown is expected to end 1 week from today, but if it has to be extended, because of this, the government may face a major pushback by an outraged public. And already I'm hearing health experts talking about a third wave of the pandemic likely to hit in March or April. So the timing of this scandal couldn't be worse. Philip?
Thanks, Thomas. And if I know one thing's for sure, you're going to keep us updated as all of this continues to progress.
Always happy to. You take care, Philip.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. Now, in Maryland, the Department of Health reports that the state is falling behind on the nationwide vaccination rate. How far behind, you ask? Well, Bureau Chief Ace Ramirez has the details. Ace?
Thank you, Philip. Maryland's Department of Health reports that about 76,900 vaccinations have been administered, which is only 1.27% of the state's population as of today. State health officials said that 20% of the federal allocations of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been utilized due to the wait on the rest of the vaccine's arrival. Maryland lags behind the nationwide administration rate, which is almost 30%. About 1,000 out of every 100,000 people have received their first dose of the vaccine. 11,500 doses were administered today. The slower than expected distribution of vaccines is due to delay in reports of the amount of vaccinations administered, as well as the second batch of vaccines arriving right before the Christmas holiday, creating a challenge to vaccinate the expected large batch of staff members. Vaccinations in hospitals are staggered in case of worst-case scenarios. Vaccine doses are sent straight to the facilities handling distribution. President of Maryland Hospital Administration, Bob Atlas, expects numbers to rise this week. There's no official timeline of how long Maryland will spend in Phase 1A before moving to the next phase, or Phase 1B, which will prioritize people with high risk of severe COVID-19 illness. About 270,100 doses have been allocated, deployed, and distributed in Maryland, according to Governor Hogan in his address during the Maryland COVID-19 briefing. Regarding the slow data reporting, Governor Hogan issued an executive order that requires all providers to report data to ImmuNet within 24 hours after vaccine administration. The State Department of Health issued an order today that any facility that hasn't been able to administer at least 75% of their total first allocation may see a decrease in future allocations until they prove capable of meeting capacity. Excess doses will be relocated to priority populations. Effective immediately, the governor stated that Maryland will be adopting a rolling vaccine allocation model. The state will no longer wait for all members of a certain priority group to be finished before moving to the next group.
Our message to those who are responsible for doing the vaccinations is clear. Either use the doses that you have been allocated, or they will be redirected to another facility or provider where they will be used immediately.
That being said, changes have been made to vaccine distribution phases. Phase 1A expands eligibility to all licensed, registered, and certified healthcare providers. Phase 1B will now include those over 75 years old, as well as special needs group homes, high-risk inmates, developmentally disabled populations, continuity of government vaccinations, plus teachers, childcare, and education staff. A new phase has been added, Phase 1C, which is to include all Marylanders 65 to 74 years of age, as well as staff if additional critical sectors such as grocery stores, public transit, food and agricultural production, postal service, and manufacturing. Finally, updated Phase 2 will include Marylanders ages 16 to 64 who are at increased risk of COVID-19, also essential workers in critical utilities and other sectors. Hogan encourages the public to stay patient and stay informed through safe and trusted sources such as MD Ready, alerts, and covidlink.maryland.gov. In Gaithersburg, Maryland, I'm Ace Ramirez. Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Pharmacies in the state of Louisiana received the COVID-19 vaccine allotted for the elderly and for more healthcare workers. In Baton Rouge, Nicole Adeline Padilla files this report.
Thank you, Philip, and hello from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. On Thursday, December 31, Governor John Bel Edwards announced that doses of the COVID-19 vaccine will be available to pharmacies statewide in limited supply beginning January 4. These doses are to be administered to people 70 and older and additional healthcare workers. The initial supply of vaccine will be extremely limited. Before going in to be vaccinated, people must contact a designated pharmacy to make appointments. Only people in Priority Group 1B, Tier 1, which is people 70 years and older, and ambulatory and outpatient healthcare personnel will be able to get the COVID vaccine at a designated pharmacy. Beginning Monday, January 4, the Louisiana Department of Health will list pharmacies where the COVID vaccine is available on its website, covidvaccine.la.gov. Louisiana Department of Health anticipates that approximately 100 pharmacies in 52 parishes will receive around 10,500 doses total in the first week. Each eligible pharmacy will receive approximately 100 doses. Governor Edwards said, "I am relieved to end this year by expanding access to the COVID vaccine to more Louisianans. Though I know we have a long road ahead of us before we put this pandemic in our rearview mirrors, I hope all Louisianans will consider taking this safe and effective vaccine when it is their turn to get it, because that is how we will ultimately reach herd immunity and get our lives back to some form of normalcy. This vaccine is a new weapon we have in the fight against COVID, but to be effective, people must take it." In the first 2 weeks of vaccination, 45,289 Louisianans have received the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, which is safe and effective against the virus. A second dose is required for people to gain fuller protection from COVID-19. Stay safe, Louisianans. I hope you are doing well there, Philip. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I'm Nicole Padilla, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Still to come, stories from our correspondents in Glendale and Panorama City, California. You're watching Eagle News America. Please stay with us.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
and welcome back. You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Philip Toledo in Atlanta. Additional housing for the homeless in Los Angeles is underway. To tell us more about it, Eagle News correspondent Annabelle de Mesa in Glendale reports. Annabelle?
Thank you, Philip. Construction of the Vignes Housing Development Project is in progress as part of the county's ongoing plan to provide affordable and interim housing to alleviate the homelessness crisis in Los Angeles. Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors Chair Hilda Solis tweets, toured the Vignes Housing Project today, a rapid development of a former parking lot that will include 232 units of potential permanent, supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness. About 5 months ago, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors voted to fund this project from the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund for a housing development project on 1060 North Vignes Street in Los Angeles. The estimated cost for the entire development is $48 million, with $42 million coming from the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund and $6 million from Chair Hilda Solis' Housing for Homeless Fund. Los Angeles County had purchased this property in 2018 with the original plan to construct it into a men's central jail. In August of 2020, the county decided instead to develop the property into a housing project to provide affordable and interim shelter to Los Angeles' most vulnerable residents in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The property is located in downtown Los Angeles and stretches almost 4 acres. It is near Union Station, so residents who live near this property will have easy access to the transportation landmark that provides public transport throughout Southern California. Let's hear from the Board of Supervisors Chair Hilda Solis on site during the construction. Take a look.
Have toured the process that's occurring here to build out 232 units of interim housing for homeless individuals. 17,000 homeless people live in the proximity here in this particular spot. So I'm very excited that the county has been able to partner to be able to use our CARES Act money from the federal government and apply it to building interim housing for people that are experiencing homelessness, to get them off the street, and also to deal with our pandemic, COVID.
The Vignes Housing Development Project is a joint partnership between the county and city with the united aim to fight hopelessness in Los Angeles, especially with the rapid rising cases of coronavirus. In Glendale, California, Annabelle de Mesa, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Annabelle. Now, this is another great project coming from Los Angeles. You know, from your report, you mentioned the project will construct 232 units. But what other amenities will be included here in this development, and when will it all be done?
Yes, Philip. The Vignes Housing Development aims to construct 232 units on a 60,500 square foot building with target completion date of March 2021. Amenities include fully furnished units with beds, televisions, bathrooms, showers, refrigerators, heaters, and air conditioners, fully ready to be lived in. In addition, all those living here will be able to avail of on-site services to assist them in obtaining permanent housing, as well as finding employment to help them get back on their feet and on a new path to a brighter life in this new year. Philip?
Thanks, Annabelle. I'm sure this will be a great help, you know, to those that are in need there in that community. Thank you so much for your report tonight.
Thank you, Philip.
Now, COVID-19 cases have been reported to be distressing, not only those who have the virus, but all others in the county who need intensive care during this time. In Panorama City, Eagle News correspondent Aaron Reo-Tutar has the details. Aaron.
Thank you, Philip. With the 1-year mark of the first safer at home lockdown just around the corner, there's been minimal progress for Los Angeles to decrease the daily average of number of confirmed COVID-19 numbers for the county. The number of people who are positive for the COVID-19 test have doubled in a time span of just a month, from November 30th, when there were around 400,000 cases, to January 2nd, when the county surpassed 800,000 positive cases. This is an increase of 905%. As of yesterday, the COVID-19 hospitalizations were at 7,697, with 21% of those hospitalized in the intensive care unit. The beginning of November marked the start of the surge in cases and hospitalizations. At that time, around 791 people were in hospitals daily, with the coronavirus, but just a few days ago, on January 2nd, the average hospitalized over a 3-day period was over 9 times that number, at 7,623 COVID-19 patients in hospitals. According to the Los Angeles Public Health Department, the high number of COVID-19 patients in our hospitals is distressing, not only for those who have COVID-19, but for all others in the county who need acute care during this time. Public health officials are expecting more surges in positive cases, possibly to 15,000, with rising hospitalizations to 8,500, and daily deaths reaching 175. Due to the holiday season and observed increases in travel and gatherings of people despite strict health orders. Angelenos are cautioned to be responsible by remaining at home as much as possible while complying with the current COVID-19 rules and guidelines in place to prevent further spread of this contagious virus. With community transmission rates at an all-time high, individuals run the risk of contracting this virus each time they leave their homes. At present, more than 1 in 5 people who get tested are positive with COVID-19. In Los Angeles County, as of yesterday, there have been 77 new deaths and 9,142 new cases of confirmed COVID-19 cases. In Panorama City, California, Aaron Rio Tutar, Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Aaron. Now, before we let you go, I just want to ask, that's not the best news, right, coming out of that area. How are the people around you, reacting to the fact that, that the case numbers just don't seem to be improving? What's the reaction of your friends and your family?
Philip, it's really distressing and depressing news here in Los Angeles. As the county surpasses 11,000 COVID-19 deaths today, and hospitalizations continue to surge. The LA Public Health Department announced a few hours ago that there are 13,512 new positive cases and 224 new deaths. There's now a total of 840,611 positive cases and 11,071 COVID-19 deaths. COVID-19 hospitalizations are now at 7,898. Another new high record in hospitalizations with an addition of 200 patients since yesterday. Los Angeles County has just seen over 1,000 new deaths due to the coronavirus in less than a week time span. Philip?
Thanks, Aaron. It's just a good reminder for everyone just to follow the safety precautions, wash your hands, maintain social distance, wear a mask, because we all have to fight this together. So make sure that you stay safe there, Aaron. Thanks for your report. Now we have some good news from the state of New Jersey. Governor Phil Murphy celebrates the state transit's most recent locomotive engineers, saying growing the ranks of this group is integral in the 3-year effort to turn New Jersey Transit around. In Union Township, Bureau Chief Carlo Valdez reports.
Thanks, Philip, and Happy New Year. On Tuesday, Governor Phil Murphy commemorated New Jersey Transit's latest locomotive engineers. They have completed their locomotive engineer training class and passed the Northeast Operating Rules of Advisory Committee and Physical Characteristics exams. The class of 17 will now finish their field training and start their final check rides this month. Governor Murphy said, "Growing the ranks of our locomotive engineers is an integral part of our 3-year effort to turn New Jersey Transit around, improve on-time performance and responsiveness, and restore the faith of New Jersey Transit's customers. We're proving that with the right team and the right dedication, we can once again make New Jersey Transit a national model for safe, accessible, and well-run mass transit." And as for coronavirus stats and numbers, New Jersey reports of 5,400 new positive COVID-19 cases, pushing the total to 499,636. Sadly, New Jersey is reporting 138 new COVID-19 deaths, pushing the total to 17,361 lives lost. In Union Township, New Jersey, Carlo Valdez, Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, Carlo. Now, up next, we'll have business news, EBC sports, and our virtual roundtable discussion about those who wrote our favorite movies. Don't want to miss it. You're watching Eagle News America. Stay with us.
Yeah, we gonna go up. Ibibigay ko ang aking puso. Sa iyong tingin pa lang ako ay natunaw na mga...
Enjoy listening to your OPM requests as we play them on air and online, from music videos.
Sana tayo ng dalawa. Huwag nang mawala.
To entertaining live and home performances of your favorite OPM artists.
I believe in love. I believe in you. Pangarap ko ay ang pangarap mo.
Watch on air and online anywhere you go around the world.
I love the way she makes me smile, she makes me smirk. Yes, sir. It gives me chills, it makes me blush, it gives me worth.
Mag-hashtag soundtrip and chill kasama ang barkada ng letters and music. Mapapanood na tuwing Sabado at Linggo. Simula January 9, 1 p.m. only on Net 25.
Gusto namin maging happy ang mga viewers sa amin pagpapatawa, sa amin pag-entertain, iba-ibang segments and games.
Batanes! Batanes!
The jackpot prize of 58,000 pesos ang tamang sagot na hinahanap natin.
3, 2, 1!
Happy peeps, on the Happy Time stage, please welcome...
Magandang dilag sa isip mo, aman mo.
Thank you po. Ay, maraming salamat po.
Taos-puso po kami nagpapasalamat sa malaking tulong na inabot niyo po sa amin.
Please watch Happy Time every day, Monday to Friday, dito lang sa Net 25. Happy Time, Happy Time,
Ikaw ay aking.
Sa mundong waring walang puwang para sa kanilang pagmamahalan, sapat pa ang tibok ng kanilang mga puso upang bumuo ng daigdig nilang sarili. Inihahandog ng Eagle Broadcasting Corporation ang kauna-unahang romantic teleserye ng Net 25.
Ay aking.
Ang daigdig ko'y ikaw.
Sa mundo.
Tuwing Sabado, ika-8 ng gabi, dito lamang sa Net 25.
At ako'y laging sa'yo hanggang magpakailanman.
It says the best defense is still containment.
We are in uncharted territory.
Silent volume 450. If I want to 100%. Standing by. Construction eh.
We have several stories from our business desk tonight. In New York, New York, Bobby Soriano files this report.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. U.S. markets have closed. Here are your latest business headlines. Investors are keeping an eye on Georgia as the state holds its runoff election to determine which party will control the Senate for the next few years. Both of Georgia's Senate seats are up for grabs today. With a win by the Democrats for both seats would give them an equal 50 seats to Republicans, but Democratic Vice President-elect Kamala Harris would be able to break any ties. Republicans would be able to hold on to the majority they've enjoyed the past 4 years if they were to win both or only one of the seats. The business world is carefully watching the race, as a Democratic majority in both the Senate and the House would most likely lead to increased government spending to fight the pandemic. This in turn would lead to increased debt and devaluation of the US dollar, making safe havens such as gold, Bitcoin, and foreign currencies more attractive investments. Gold futures are up 3% since the beginning of the new year. In a surprise move today, Saudi Arabia announced it would unilaterally cut 1 million barrels a day of crude production starting next month. The decision by one of the largest oil producers in the world had an immediate impact on oil prices, with crude jumping to over $50 a barrel for the first time since February of last year. Oil prices have remained low throughout the pandemic, with demand soft due to less people traveling. But the announcement by Saudi Arabia, in addition to recent deals between OPEC and Russia to keep oil production flat, has seen the price of oil steadily rise since October. The uptrend may not continue despite the production cut by Saudi Arabia, as an increasing number of coronavirus cases around the world look to hinder any strong recovery by the energy sector. Lastly, with the focus on efforts to produce the COVID vaccine, Drugmakers began the new year with an increase in drug prices for over 500 different products. According to a report from Reuters and analysis done by healthcare research firm 46 Brooklyn, drug makers such as Pfizer, AbbVie, and Bristol Myers went on to increase the price of their drugs by a median 4.8%. Drugs affected include many top-selling products such as the rheumatoid arthritis treatment Humira by AbbVie, which itself saw a 7.4% price increase. The hikes are in response to the decrease in overall demand for drug treatments as the COVID pandemic has reduced doctor visits, and rules enacted by the Trump administration in an effort to reduce drug prices. Further Medicaid data analysis by 46 Brooklyn has shown that drug price increases have slowed substantially since 2015, both in terms of the size and frequency of price hikes. However, the average cost per branded drug is still rising as manufacturers attempt to offset the decrease in price hikes with higher initial prices. U.S. indices saw gains today following a rocky start to the year as investors continue to wait for the Georgia election results. Reporting from New York, Bobby Soriano, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Last season, the NBA was a model for sports leagues in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's 2021, a new season, new challenges, and new adjustments. DJ Gonzalez has the details on the league's plan for this basketball season. DJ.
Thanks, Philip. The National Basketball Association, or the NBA, is upping their mandates to help combat the virus as cases of positive COVID tests continue to see an uptick around the country, especially after the holiday season. Last year, the NBA season and many other sporting events were postponed during the first outbreak of COVID-19 in America. After months of meticulous planning for the best safety measures of the players and team staff, the season resumed in a bubble environment in Orlando, Florida, where only NBA players and team personnel were allowed to reside. Within the controlled environment, it was a lot easier to administer the health of the players and staff. At the conclusion of it all, the NBA recorded 0 positive cases during the 4-month period inside the bubble. This season is so much different. In the bubble, all players and staff basically live there secluded from their families and loved ones. Now, at a time where the virus is recording record high numbers, players are traveling to different states to play their games. Team coaches and staff also travel with them, and when coming back home, stay with their families in their respective homes. It's a lot trickier to manage the health of the league, so the NBA continues to tighten up their rules and restrictions. Starting tonight in the NBA games, all NBA players who are present at the games must wear a face mask until they check into the game. They are then highly recommended to wear a face covering when they check out of the game and return into the bench area. This rule also resets and is taken into effect again after the first half. All coaching staff and inactive players present on the bench must wear their face coverings throughout the entirety of the game. In addition to this, all players and coaches must continue to have face coverings outside of the team environment and must report the names of any personnel they have frequent interaction with who are not part of the team facility, such as trainers, therapists, chiropractors, etc. The league also increased the previous maximum travel party size by 1 to include a staff member who can handle contact tracing requirements during road trips. This new mandate followed the news of NBA superstar Kevin Durant having to complete a 7-day quarantine and sit out of the next 4 games of the Brooklyn Nets after recent exposure to someone who tested positive for COVID-19. Durant had the virus back in May of 2020, but has tested negative in his most recent examinations. However, the superstar is still hindered to play because of the strict protocols put forth by the NBA before the season began. As the country continues to figure out ways to get the virus under control, leaders in the NBA and the sports world also continue to adapt and change their protocols for the safety of their players and staff. In Alexandria, Virginia, EJ Gonzalez, Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks, EJ. And you know, the wearing of face masks, you know, that tends to be controversial or a hot topic no matter where you go. What's your opinion regarding the enhanced face mask protocols for the NBA?
Yeah, you know, it's a smart move. You know, there was actually a video that surfaced on social media recently where a college team wore masks on the court during the game, an away game. You know, that wasn't a rule. That wasn't an enforced rule by any means. In fact, some would probably say it's dangerous to be playing a high-intensity sport with a mask blocking their flow of oxygen. That team did that out of their own will. And it just shows that many people are aware that this virus is still around and continues to harm many. So yeah, there had to be some sort of action taken for the safety of the athletes and staff. Unlike last year where the NBA only had to worry about themselves in the bubble, this year they're back with families when they return home from the away games. The NBA leaders, they had to consider not only the health of their players, but also the families. So it was necessary for the league executives to mandate this, especially during this time, again, where numbers for COVID cases and related deaths are at an all-time high.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, EJ, for your report this evening. It's always a pleasure to have you representing EBC Sports. And I hope you'll stay on because up next is our virtual roundtable discussion.
Yep, definitely. Thanks, Philip.
Now, if there's one thing many of us did these past few months at home, aside from washing our hands, maybe cooking more, I'm sure many of us watched a few movies. Now, we're always looking for who's the next star, the actors, the actresses that are going to be in the show, or what are the special effects, but it's the script, the lines that people say that ties everything together. Now, today is National Screenwriters Day, and we celebrate those that write our favorite shows and movies. Now, before we begin our virtual roundtable discussion tonight, I'm going to put our panel on the spot and see if anybody knows who wrote the screenplay for the most recent Oscar winner for Best Motion Picture. Does anybody have any ideas? I don't know. I see on my screen everybody's kind of thinking, can anybody Google it? Does anybody know what the most recent Best Motion Picture winner was? It was earlier this year in February. I don't know if you remember. All right.
No idea.
All right. So everybody is stumped. I'll tell you the answer. So the Best Motion Picture winner from the Oscars show earlier this year that happened before the pandemic was Parasite, the Korean film. And the screenwriter, I believe, was also the director, Bong Joon-ho. Do you guys remember that movie? I think we talked about making Ramdan on one of the episodes earlier this summer with the noodles. EJ, you remember, right?
Yeah, I definitely remember. I still haven't tried that yet.
There you go. It's good, but high in sodium. But anyways, now let's ask everybody, what's your favorite movie and who is the screenwriter that you can thank for that quotable script? Let's start in Alberta with Thomas. What's your favorite movie and who wrote it?
Okay, I promised to limit myself to talkies, not the silent movies I grew up with. I'm not quite that old, but old movies. My favorites are old musicals written by the likes of Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lerner and Lowe. A couple of them, South Pacific, was adapted from a book by James A. Michener by Rodgers and Hammerstein. A great wartime picture. Lerner and Lowe adapted a George Bernard Shaw play called Pygmalion, turned it into a musical called My Fair Lady, another great movie. And again, these are from the 50s, 60s, that era there. Love the music, love the scripts.
And I'm sure that those are the songs that you're singing in the shower every morning. Is that right, Thomas?
Actually, some of them I do, like Some Enchanted Evening. I still sing that at karaoke.
Well, there
that
you go.
Came from South Pacific.
We'll see how much time we have left after everybody goes around. Maybe we'll have you sing a little ditty for us. But let's ask Annabelle, what's your favorite movie and who's the screenwriter that you can thank?
My favorite movie so far is called Spirited Away, and the screenwriter who wrote it is Hayao Miyazaki. It's a timeless classic for me. I've watched it since I was younger. It's still a favorite of mine today. And the good thing about Hayao Miyazaki is that Spirited Away isn't just the only great movie that he made. He's made Howl's Moving Castle, Princess Mononoke, Ponyo, other great movies, and he's really talented in regards to storytelling and creating lovable characters. So I definitely name him as my favorite screenwriter.
Excellent. And can you, for those who may not have seen it, can you give us just a short synopsis of that movie? And if there's any quotable quote, maybe, because, it's a screenwriter.
I don't want to give away too much because it's an experience I don't want to spoil, but it starts off with a girl who's moving to a new town with her family, and her family takes a quick stop to a mysterious town. They decide to eat food displayed there without paying first, and then they get transformed into pigs. And then the girl finds out she's in a world she's never seen, she's never been prepared for, so now she really has to find ways to save her parents and save herself.
That sounds very exciting. Thank you for sharing that. Aaron, how about you? What's your favorite movie and the screenwriter that's responsible?
I have quite a few favorite movies, but one of them stood out because I watched it like 3 times during this whole pandemic. It was the movie Inception, not only directed by Christopher Nolan, but it was also screenwritten by him. So, yeah, that was my favorite movie.
And what did you like so much about Inception? I remember there were some parts that it confused me a little bit. Well, what did you like about it?
Honestly, it was the confusion that led me to like the movie, because there's so much depth of what happens, and the plot itself, it really intrigued me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Aaron. EJ, how about you? We have a few minutes left. What's your favorite movie and the screenwriter responsible?
Yeah, as of recently, my wife and we can watch this all the time, The Greatest Showman, and just love the music. But the movie itself, it was the screenplay was written by Bill Condon and Jenny Bix. I have no idea who they are, but thank you, because my wife and we really enjoy this. And one of the other screenplay writers that we really love, she wrote the TV series Scandal and Grey's Anatomy. That's Shonda Rhimes. We love both of those TV series, and she is really talented in getting your heart really like racing in throughout the things that happen in the shows.
Absolutely. Now, unlike Thomas, I'm not going to make you sing. But EJ, what's your favorite song from the Greatest Showman? Which is the one that gets stuck in your head the most?
It's really, there's just so many to choose from. I really can't choose a favorite, but probably the song in the beginning that he sang with his wife. I can't remember the name from the top of the head, but once that tune plays, trust me, I can sing every single lyric.
the Million Dreams.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, no, I know because that happens, but my son is really into all those things that are on YouTube, but if there's one movie that, he'll sit and at least sing and stomp his feet to, it's A Greatest Showman, or at least the first 15, 20 minutes, and then the last like 10 minutes. But for me personally, my favorite movie, or at least the movie that I can quote the most, is actually Independence Day. If you guys remember that from the early 90s with Bill Pullman and Will Smith. And, kind of like EJ mentioned, I'm not sure who Dean Devlin or Roland Emmerich are, but I think they wrote a great movie. I love it. I could watch it over and over again, and I can quote it most of the time. So thank you, everyone, for joining us in our virtual roundtable tonight, and thank you to all of our screenwriters out there who may be watching us on National Screenwriters Day. And also, of course, most importantly, before we go, we need a salute to our healthcare workers, first responders, and essential workers, because all of you out there on the front line, you're doing a tremendous job helping all of us get through this pandemic. Let's give them a round of applause, everyone. We truly appreciate you. Now, thank you so much for joining today's Eagle News America. Wherever you are, please stay safe and stay well. I'm Philip Toledo. We live in interesting times.